Most people think they can't articulate themselves because they're not smart enough. That's not the problem. The problem is they've been trained their whole life to memorize answers, not to think out loud. And those are two completely different skills. Today I'm going to show you exactly how to fix that. 1. How to articulate yourself intelligently and why most people think they can't. When I was young, I was always drawn to people who sounded intelligent. People like Alan Watts, Jordan Peterson, Daniel Schmachtenberger, or other individuals who could explain deep ideas in an interesting way. Most of the time I didn't understand what they were saying because either I was too young or they overcomplicated everything they said. But since it sounded smart and articulate, I listened anyway and gave them my respect. The thing is, I never thought I could do the same. That's not to say I am the most articulate person in the world right now. I'm not. I just didn't think my brain had the capacity to do that. I was a smart kid in school, but being good at taking tests is a much different skill than stringing together coherent thoughts about big problems and articulating them to someone else. I felt like I had to memorize entire books worth of information so that I could recite it on the spot. Because I was trained to learn that way. But now, over a decade later, and without really trying to become articulate, my job as a writer and self-proclaimed internet micro-celebrity is to articulate ideas in a useful or impactful way. Millions of people have chosen to read my thoughts on a screen over the past 6 years. The thing is, I'm quite boring. I'm not an entertainer. I'm not that funny either. I wouldn't even say that my writing is anywhere close to revolutionary. I say that in hopes of inspiring others like me who are a bit more reserved. So, maybe you're a new creator who wants to stand out. Maybe you're a founder who wants to get more users for your software. Maybe you're going on a podcast and don't want to stumble over your words. Maybe you want to command presence in a company meeting or sales call. Or maybe you just want to be a more interesting person. I've put together 3 methods to articulate yourself intelligently, and I've ordered them from beginner to advanced. These are what I use when it's time to write or speak, but there's something more important that must come before. The inner album of greatest hits. You only need 8 to 10 big ideas, and you must be willing to repeat them. If you want to articulate yourself intelligently, you need a pool of 8 to 10 of your biggest ideas that can be connected to almost any topic. Then, when it's time to write or speak in any situation, you have a starting point that you've already thought through hundreds of times before. I've been getting invited onto more big podcasts, but these are much, much different than the ones I was invited on when I was just starting out. There is a lot on the line. These big podcasters pour tens of thousands of dollars, if not more, into the quality of their production. It's nerve-wracking. And since hundreds of thousands of people may listen to the podcast, I feel like I am responsible for providing as much value as I possibly can. I'm not the best podcast guest yet. When I listen back to them, I'm always kicking myself about how I could have said something better, and that leads to the problem. I've written 2 books, thousands of social posts, hundreds of newsletters, and YouTube videos. It's obvious to me which ideas are the most valuable. It's obvious which ideas have the most views or have led to the most DMs about how this changed their life. It's obvious that I really only have 8 to 10 big ideas that represent my brand and the value I can provide. I've spent countless hours refining those ideas. Those are the ideas people want to hear. Those are the ideas that introduce new listeners to who I am. But that's my biggest mental hurdle. I don't want to sound like I'm repeating myself, so when I get on a podcast or am asked to speak in front of a crowd, I avoid saying the things that I've already said well. My mind goes blank and I have to force something out to avoid an awkwardly long pause. Jordan Peterson in his prime was known for his articulation. He was captivating. Why? Look at his body of work, and it's obvious. If you do not have a body of work around the topics you wish to articulate yourself, you may want to increase your expectations as to the work you have ahead of you. Now, why do you listen to your favorite musician? Because they have a specific sound or style that you enjoy. Most of their music sounds the same with slight variations here and there. You can listen to a few seconds of their song and know exactly which artist plays it. If an EDM artist immediately decided to switch to country music, their first track would be horrible, as most first iterations are, and most of their audience would not like it. The same applies to being a creator, writer, speaker, or just a person who wants to articulate themselves. You need to write or speak thousands of times until your best ideas are obvious. By nature, you must repeat yourself, because the most important ideas deserve to be repeated. And how else are you going to refine them? The best speakers on a podcast are those who don't answer the question the host asks directly. They don't say, well, good question. I've talked about that topic before, and here's the answer. Instead, they speak their best idea on that topic with confidence, then expand on it with supporting points. Alex Hormozy is great at this. If a podcast host were to ask him, what's the greatest skill you can learn in today's world? Hormozy could just say sales or offer creation. but instead he would probably respond with his most viral idea, something the audience wouldn't expect, setting both him and the host up for a conversation people actually want to listen to. 3. Beginner, the micro-story. Problem to amplify to solution. The mind is a story engine. Humans can't help but pay attention to a story, especially if it's short and impactful. Once you learn how to do it well, you can effectively short-circuit someone's brain into being interested in the topic you are talking about. The foundation of a story is transformation. This does not have to be a transformation about a specific person. Like in a novel, a transformation can be as simple as introducing a problem and giving a solution. Here's how you structure what you want to say. Problem, state a relatable problem that you've observed or experienced before. This grounds the idea and makes people curious about the solution. Amplify, illustrate how that problem leads to a negative outcome if it is not solved. This both increases the desire for a solution and makes the solution perceived as that much more valuable. Solution, state the solution to the problem. In a short paragraph, this can be one sentence or a short list. In a long newsletter, article, or script, this can be all of the key points with their explanations. If you've studied copywriting or marketing at all, you've seen this before. It's so simple, yet so powerfully taps into human psychology if the person on the receiving end actually has the problem and desires the solution. After 6 years of doing this, it's still my go-to when I need a way to articulate a thought fast. Now, of course, this is assuming you already have an idea to write about. If you don't, you need to hunt for them. You need to read old books, go down rabbit holes on a topic, listen to a new podcast, or just sit with your thoughts and follow them until you reach a compelling insight. When you hunt for an idea, you aren't just letting the information go in one ear and out the other. You are listening intently for an idea that you wish you wrote. Then you jot it down so you don't lose it. Then you articulate it in your own words using these frameworks so that it takes a new shape. 4. Intermediate, the pyramid principle. Answer first, then build your case. The pyramid principle is a communication framework that structures ideas in a hierarchical, logical way to make information more palatable and persuasive. Unlike most content today that waits to give you the answer until the end of the video, this takes an answer-first approach. Start with the main idea, the key conclusion or recommendation, support it with key arguments, usually 3 to 5 key points, then provide detailed evidence, data, examples, analysis. This works perfectly with our example from before about Hormozi on a podcast. His answer at the top of the pyramid would be the single striking idea. Then he could support it with key arguments as to why that is the greatest skill to learn. All you have to do is ask why 3 to 5 times and provide solid reasoning. After that, he gives examples from his own life, data, or anecdotes from clients. This is a great way to expand on key points in a newsletter, thread, or YouTube video. You can also use it to start a meeting or conversation off on an interesting note, or as a way to respond to questions on a podcast. Start with a great idea, make an argument about it, then support it with data. 5. Advanced cross-domain synthesis. Steal concepts from other fields to explain your idea in a way no one else can. This one is my favorite because I have multiple interests. It's hard for me to stick to one topic or niche. I love studying psychology, philosophy, business, design, tech, health, and really anything that gives me the tools to live a better life. Here is how I tend to structure most of my writing. Problem and amplify. Your introduction should state a relatable problem and illustrate what happens if that problem is not solved. Cross-domain synthesis. Note patterns or concepts from your other interests that help support your argument. If I'm talking about deep work, I can use the concept of entropy from physics to illustrate how distraction works. This teaches my audience something new, and I can sleep well knowing that all other deep work content out there does not do this. Unique process or solution. Give a list of ideas or steps that best solve the problem you introduced at the beginning, solidifying the transformation. These should come from your own contemplation rather than someone else's prescription. And the problem here is that this leads to something very long, like a newsletter, book chapter, YouTube video, or even a solo podcast. If you're just starting out, you'll be staring at a blank screen because you don't know how to fill in each section. Luckily, writing is like Legos with ideas, and ideas come in predictable forms. Here are a few easy ones to cycle through when you get stuck. A relevant pain point to get things flowing, an example to ground what you're saying, a personal story from your own life, a statistic to add authority, a metaphor to explain a complex idea simply, a quote that justifies your point, a reframe to give a fresh perspective, or simply asking what, how, or why. Because thinking is questioning. These are the Legos that compose most of my outlines. Once you get the hang of it, It becomes second nature, and your thinking process starts to rewire.